The confetti was still grudged into the carpet like tiny, colorful bruises when the house went quiet. Music had roared for hours, laughter, clinking glasses, the clatter of plates piled high with food that smelled like holidays. When the door finally shut on the last guest, the silence felt like a punishment. Dishes leaned against each other in the sink, frosting clung to forks, and helium balloons drifted, tired and bobbing, near the ceiling lamp like moons that had forgotten how to glow. Leah waited where she always did, behind the kitchen doorway, where the light barely reached and the smell of baked cheese and roast chicken made her stomach twist. Her socks had damp spots from mopping spilled soda. She didn't have a party plate with her name in cursive. She had a cracked bowl. She stood listening, counting the steps in the hallway, the sharper click of the heels she had learned to fear. When those heels faded to the living room and a TV murmured, Leah slipped into the kitchen. She moved quickly, not because she loved moving quickly, but because if she moved slowly she'd think, and if she thought she might hesitate, and if she hesitated Mariella would notice. The refrigerator light cut across her face as she opened it, a harsh square of white. Trays wrapped in plastic. Slices of layered cake, with all the strawberries scooped off. A pot of rice and peas, cold enough that steam wouldn't rise anymore. On the counter waited the big aluminum pan everyone had admired, its corners scraped down to a sheen, but in the center, unbelievably, was a mound of forgotten penne, edges stiff with cheese. The kind of leftovers guests promised to come back for, then left behind with laughter. Leah pinched a noodle. Cold. She closed her eyes and tasted anyway. It was salty, smoky, the kind of flavor that made you understand why adults fought over seconds. She whispered thank you to no one, then to the pan, then to the clatter of the house that had finally given her 5 quiet minutes. She ate with her fingers, polite as she could be with food that didn't love being polite. Every third bite she listened for footsteps and froze, noodle halfway to her mouth, breath locked in her chest. Are you stealing? The words were soft as thread, but pulled tight, so tight that everything inside Leah nodded. Mariella leaned on the doorframe, party dress still sparkling under the kitchen light. Her lipstick had worn to a mean line. I thought I told you to throw that out, she added, tilting her head as if the pan itself had defied her. Leah swallowed, the food scraping her throat. You said after the guests, she murmured. I was just cleaning. With your mouth. Mariella's smile didn't reach her eyes. She crossed the kitchen, heels clicking like small hammers. Leftovers are not for you. Leftovers are for tomorrow's lunch. For my lunch. She tapped the lid of the pan. You know, some girls your age earn their keep without eating like strays. Something in Leah's chest shrank to a corner. She set the noodle back in the pan as if returning stolen treasure. The room smelled like drying wine and lemon detergent and the lingering sweetness of cake icing. She wanted to say she'd clean everything twice, that she'd scrub the saucepan until the bottom showed her reflection, that she could drink water and call a meal. She'd done it before. But the word stray hung there, and behind it a bigger silence. Father. He wasn't here. He hadn't been for months, then years, and every month that slipped into a year Mariella's voice grew wider, her hand quicker with chores, her tolerance thinner than the film on the leftover gravy. The story of him in this house had bleached in the sun like a picture left on a porch. You could make out his shape if you squinted, but the colors were wrong, the smile too faint to trust. Wash the dishes, Mariella said, turning away, and sleep in the closet tonight. The girls might still be drunk, and I don't want you making them uncomfortable. The closet, small, dark, smelling of cedar balls and old coats. Air that went stale by 2 in the morning. A folded towel for a pillow. Leah felt the nod leave her head before she could stop it. When the TV in the living room rose and fell like a tired ocean, she pulled the rubber gloves from the drawer and began. Plates, forks, lipstick stains that smiled up from glass rims. She didn't cry. It was a rule she had made with herself when she learned rules were the only way to stay afloat in a house that didn't want you to swim. A fork clattered and skittered under the fridge. Leah knelt, reached an arm into the shadow, and touched a cool edge. Her fingers brushed something else, paper stiff with grease. She pinched it and drew it out, A folded napkin with a tiny silver pin caught in the fibers, a delicate leaf shape, the kind women wore on collars at the kind of parties where girls like her served and swept. It must have fallen earlier. The leaf gleamed even under kitchen grime. Leah held it up and imagined, just for a second, a voice saying, "That looks pretty on you." She imagined laughter and warm hands. A father's jacket, warm from shoulders that had carried her when shoes were too big. She closed her eyes and swallowed the wish. Wishes were things that echoed in the closet and made sleep hard. "You done?" Mariella's voice again, from nowhere. She moved like a shadow, collecting the air. "You're slow and careless. The girls say you hover. It makes them nervous." "I'm sorry," Leah said. It came out as breath. "Sorry doesn't wash plates." Mariella's gaze dropped to the napkin and the pin. "Where did you get that?" "It fell," Leah stammered. "From the table. I'm putting it aside." Mariella was across the kitchen before Leah finished. She snatched the pin, snapped the napkin into the trash, and brought the leaf to her ear, testing how it looked as if Leah weren't there at all. "There. Better. Next time, you bring things to me. You don't handle them." She rolled her wrist. "Do you understand?" Leah nodded again. She had learned that nodding was the only language they shared. When everything was scrubbed and stacked, the sink silver as a winter pond, Leah padded to the hallway. The closet door opened with that breathy sigh old wood makes. Inside, her folded towel and a thin blanket waited. She curled onto the floor and listened to the house exhale, pipes clicking, a bathroom fan moaning somewhere upstairs, the TV finally dying. The party was over. The show had ended. But the story kept going. That was the thing. It kept going past the pretty parts. In the dark, Leah replayed the way the penne had tasted. Not to torture herself, but to save it. The little smoky bite, the way the cheese stuck to her fingertips and made them important for a second. She imagined a plate, her plate, and a chair she could pull out without asking. And a voice saying her name like it belonged in a room. "Leah. Not you. Not girl." Sleep gathered in corners, slow. She was almost under when she heard a sound the house never made at night. A car door soft and final, rubber against curb. Footsteps, not Mariella's hard clicks, not the drunken stagger of guests who forgot their jackets. Slow, heavy, measured. The front lock turned. The door opened. Cold air moved down the hallway and slipped under the closet door like a secret. "Hello." The voice wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. It had weight. It carried memory the way old trees carry wind. Leah sat up, heart tumbling. She knew that voice. Not as you know a song you just heard. As you know a lullaby you thought you had forgotten until someone hummed it in the next room and your bones turned toward the sound. She pressed her ear to the door. The hallway smelled like night and car leather and rain, as if the door had brought the street inside. Mariella was quick now, heels a sudden metronome, smoothing her dress with hands that wanted to hide everything messy. "You," she said, voice directed down the hall, sugar on top, glass underneath. "What are you doing here at this hour?" "I live here," the man said simply. His footsteps came closer. "Or I used to." Leah's fingers shook against the doorframe. She pressed them still. Her breath slowed the way it did before a high dive in PE class. The moment you decide you will jump and the air will either catch you or it won't. In her chest, something small stood up. "Leah," the voice said, and it felt like the house pulled back its own walls to listen. "Is my girl here?" The closet was suddenly too small for air, for fear, for hope. Leah's hand went to the knob and stayed there, not turning, as if it were attached to a life that could tilt one way or the other. On the other side of the wood, footsteps paused. The living room lamp clicked on, spilled a rectangle of warm light under the door. Mariella hissed something low and brittle that broke halfway through. Leah turned the knob. She opened the door into the hall's yellow glow, hair flattened by the blanket, knees dusty from the closet floor, the smell of lemon detergent still on her hands. At the end of the hallway stood a man with the same eyes she met in the mirror when she could stand to look. Tired, a little older than memory allowed, traveling clothes that said the road had been long. His mouth softened and then trembled because sometimes relief is heavier than grief. "There you are," he breathed. Leah tried to speak, but the room was water. The word father didn't fit in her mouth anymore. It felt too important, too sharp at the edges. She managed a nod, the only language she and the house had ever agreed on, then stepped forward. Behind him, on the threshold, the knight leaned in like a witness. And somewhere deep in the kitchen, under a sheet of plastic, the leftovers waited, proof that what is dismissed still remains, that what isn't meant for you can still be yours if you hold on long enough to the sound of a car door and a key and a lock and a voice that knows your name. If this beginning touched you, don't forget to like this story and share your feelings in the comments. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. The hallway light was dim, but it was enough to outline the man's figure, enough to make Mariella's painted smile tighten into something sharp. She leaned against the wall, one arm folded across her waist as if to guard herself, though everyone in that house knew she didn't guard. She ruled. "Why now?" she asked, her tone syrupy but quivering underneath. After all this time, why now? The man, her father, Leah realized with a mixture of awe and fear, didn't answer right away. His eyes were fixed on her, not the woman blocking his path. There was something raw in his gaze, like someone thirsty staring at water they never thought they would find again. He stepped forward, slow, cautious, as if afraid she would vanish if he moved too quickly. "Because I couldn't stay away any longer," he said finally. His voice cracked on the last word, and Leah felt it echo inside her ribs. Mariella laughed, brittle and bright. "Don't romanticize your absence. You left. You stayed gone. You don't get to walk back into this house as if nothing happened." She gestured toward Leah with a casual flick, like she was pointing out dust on a shelf. "She barely remembers you." That was the cruelest lie Mariella had told yet. Leah remembered every fragment, the way his arms used to lift her high above the garden fence, the smell of leather when he came home from work, the sound of his voice humming when storms rattled the windows. Time had stretched those memories thin, but they had never broken. "I remember," Leah whispered before she could stop herself. Her voice was so small it startled her, but it carried down the hall like a spark in darkness. Her father's eyes glistened. He crouched slightly, extending a hand as if she were still the little girl who needed coaxing to take her first steps. "See," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "She remembers." Mariella's jaw clenched. For a moment, Leah thought she might slap her. But the woman straightened, smoothed her dress again, and smiled that glassy smile. Children say anything when they're scared. Don't project your fairy tales onto her. Her father ignored her. He lowered his hand but stayed close, his presence filling the hallway with a warmth Leah hadn't felt in years. "Are you all right?" he asked, his eyes scanning the shadows beneath her eyes, the too thinness of her arms, the way her nightshirt barely covered her knees. The answer rose in her throat. No, not all right, not ever all right, but she swallowed it. What if Mariella punished her later for telling the truth? What if speaking broke this fragile moment? So she nodded, the same mechanical nod she had given Mariella 100 times. But her father didn't take it as obedience. He took it as survival. And survival he understood. He straightened slowly, his eyes never leaving her. "Pack her things," he told Mariella. "She's coming with me." The silence that followed was sharp, cutting the air like glass. Mariella's smile cracked. "Excuse me." "You heard me," he said. His voice carried the quiet steel of someone who had fought too many battles to be dismissed now. "My daughter is not sleeping in closets and eating scraps while strangers dance in her house. She's coming with me tonight." Leah's knees trembled. The words "with me" swirled in her chest like warm honey, sticking everywhere, sweet and unreal. But Mariella's laugh snapped her back. "You don't get to dictate terms," she sneered. "This house is mine now. Everything inside it is mine, even her." The word "mine" pressed on Leah's chest like a heavy hand. She shrank back instinctively, but her father's gaze hardened. "She is not a possession," he said. "She's my child." For the first time, Mariella's mask slipped. Anger rippled across her face, twisting the beauty that guests had admired hours before. "And where were you while I raised her? While I put food on the table?" "Food," he barked, disbelief rising in his tone. "She's skin and bones. I see the truth written on her face." Don't lie to me, Mariella. I know neglect when I see it. Leah's breath caught. Someone had finally said it out loud. The word that lived in the corners of her heart. Neglect. The thing that explained the hunger, the chores, the nights in the closet. Hearing it spoken was like someone opening a locked window in a suffocating room. Mariella stepped closer, her voice low and venomous. You don't get to come back after years of silence and play the hero. She belongs here. With me. Her father's reply was simple, but it landed like a hammer. No. She belongs with love. The hallway froze. Even the house seemed to listen. The air grew thick, heavy with the weight of everything unspoken. Leah's hands shook against her sides. Part of her wanted to run forward, bury herself in his coat, breathe in the scent of rain and road. Another part trembled with fear of Mariella's revenge, fear of hope being snatched away just when it had appeared. Mariella's eyes flicked to Leah, sharp and dangerous. Go back to bed, she ordered. Now. Leah froze, caught between two worlds. The old world of closets and crumbs. The new world of warmth and the possibility of freedom. Her father extended his hand again. His voice softened, but it carried a gravity that pulled at her very bones. Leah, you don't have to obey her anymore. The words cracked something inside her. A lifetime of silence trembled at the edges of her throat. She looked at Mariella's narrowed eyes, then at the man whose eyes mirrored hers. And for the first time, she felt a choice blooming like dawn. She took a single step forward. The step she took felt heavier than all the nights she had carried trays bigger than her arms. It echoed in the hallway, soft but final, like a lock turning somewhere deep inside her. Mariella's eyes narrowed to slits. Her father's hand was still outstretched, steady and patient, but Leah hesitated in the space between them. The house seemed to hold its breath. The silence wasn't empty. It was crowded with memories, with fear, with every whispered thought Leah had swallowed in the dark closet. Don't you dare, Mariella hissed, her voice a serpent's. She reached forward as if to seize Leah's shoulder. You're ungrateful. Everything you have, I gave you. Leah almost laughed at the cruelty of the lie, but her throat was too dry. She remembered nights when dinner was a crust of bread, mornings when she had to clean lipstick stains off wine glasses instead of eating breakfast. She remembered the taste of leftovers, the closest thing to kindness the house ever allowed her. Her father stepped in front of her, his body blocking Mariella's hand. His voice was firm, steady. She owes you nothing. Mariella's laugh cracked like broken glass. And you? What do you think she owes you? You were gone. You abandoned her. The words hit like stones, and Leah flinched. But her father didn't. His eyes didn't waver. I was lost, he admitted. But I came back. That's the difference. I came back for her. For the first time, Leah saw Mariella falter. Just a flicker, a twitch of her lips, a shift in her stance. As if his words had pierced a place she kept hidden. But the mask returned quickly, sharper than before. You think you can just take her? Walk out with nothing but words, she spat. This house, this life, it's mine. And she's part of it. Leah's pulse thundered in her ears. She wanted to shout, I am not yours. But the fear still coiled inside her, whispering that punishment would follow every act of defiance. Her father's presence was like a shield, but Mariella's shadow still reached long. Then he said the words Leah never imagined hearing. Pack a bag, Leah. We're leaving tonight. Her breath caught. Leaving. The word was a door opening. The closet fading into nothing. The chance to sleep in a bed that smelled of clean sheets instead of cedar dust. The chance to eat food not picked over by strangers. Mariella's laughter rang again, high and brittle. Leaving? With what? He has nothing to offer you. He has no right. She turned her venom on Leah now, her eyes sharp as knives. And you think he loves you? He'll leave again. He'll forget you. At least I kept you here, under my roof. Something in Leah snapped. Maybe it was the cruelty of twisting neglect into generosity. Maybe it was the way her father's eyes shone, waiting for her courage. Her voice came out small, but carried weight. A roof is not love. The words hung in the air like a bell strike. Even the house seemed stunned. Her father's face broke with pride. Mariella's expression curdled. She stepped back as if slapped, her heels skidding against the wood floor. "You ungrateful little," she began, but her voice faltered when her father stepped closer. "Don't," he warned, his tone low and dangerous. "Don't speak to her that way again." The authority in his voice was undeniable. For the first time, Leah saw Mariella shrink instead of grow. Her lips pressed into a thin line, fury trapped behind them. The moment stretched, taut and fragile. Then Leah's father turned to her, his expression softening. "Go," he said gently. "Get your things." Her heart hammered as she hurried toward the small room that wasn't really hers. She pushed open the door and saw the familiar cracked dresser, the thin blanket on the bed she barely used, the closet where she had slept too many nights. She didn't own much. A few clothes folded neatly, a small stuffed bear with one eye missing, and a notebook filled with words she never dared to speak aloud. She packed them quickly into a worn bag, each item proof of her survival. Her fingers lingered on the notebook. Inside were pages filled with sketches of imagined meals, warm houses, smiling faces. Dreams she had never expected to come true. She tucked it carefully into the bag, as if carrying a fragile part of herself. When she returned to the hallway, bag clutched in her hand, her father's eyes softened with relief. Mariella stood stiff, her face a mask of rage barely held together. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Both of you. Don't think you can run from me." But Leah's father didn't answer her. He reached for Leah's hand, warm and steady, and guided her toward the door. The night air rushed in as he opened it. Cool, fresh, scented with rain and earth. Leah breathed deeply, the world outside washing over her like freedom. Behind them, Mariella's voice rose one last time. "She'll never be more than leftovers." Leah froze at the doorway. The words stabbed deep. For a heartbeat, she wanted to turn back, to shrink again into silence. But then she felt her father's hand tighten gently around hers. His voice, steady and sure, anchored her. "No," he said. "She is everything." And with that, they stepped into the night, leaving the house of closets and crumbs behind. They walked beneath a sky that felt enormous, a blue-black bowl studded with cold stars. The streetlights hummed. The puddles from a late evening shower held tiny galaxies of their own. Leah clutched her bag as if it might float away if she loosened her grip. Her father kept her close, not dragging, not hurting, just there, a warm shape against the night. A car idled at the curb. Not the loud kind. It purred, low and steady, the way expensive things seemed to apologize for taking up space. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door without a word. Leah hesitated, half expecting the world to snap back, a voice to yell from the doorway, a hand to seize her wrist. Nothing. Only the whisper of tires as they pulled away and the house shrinking in the rear window, its windows blind and blank. The city unfolded in quiet ribbons. Street after street gave way to wider avenues, then to a steep climb where buildings grew taller and their windows glittered like stacked jewelry boxes. When they stopped, the building's lobby looked like it had been scrubbed with morning, even though it was near midnight. Polished stone, a desk with a man who nodded at her father with respect that said welcome back without needing to speak. The elevator rose. Leah stared at her own reflection in the mirrored wall, hair mussed, knees scuffed, eyes too big, a nightshirt that looked out of place under soft golden light. She tried to smooth it, then stopped. She didn't want to hide where she had come from. Not tonight. The apartment door opened into a hush she had only ever seen in magazines left in waiting rooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city's river cutting silver through the dark, shelves of books that looked touched, not staged. But the thing that made her throat ache was the kitchen, bright, open, with a bowl of fruit that was not plastic, bananas with freckles, peaches softening at their tops, bread in a cloth bag that smelled like Sunday. Her father didn't tour her around. He didn't announce the square footage or point at the view. He took her to the kitchen, set her bag by a chair, and washed his hands like someone stepping into a sacred place. He reached for eggs, butter, a pan. "I don't know what you like anymore," he said, voice small for such a tall room. "But this used to make you smile." The sizzle was soft, homey. He worked like a man, remembering a map by touch, turning the heat down, folding the eggs in gentle waves. He set a plate in front of her and slid a piece of toast next to it, then sat across the island, as if the counter were a river they'd meet in the middle of. Leah hesitated at the first bite the way she had in the kitchen at the party, listening for footsteps that would accuse her. Here there were only the city's distant sirens and the hiss of the pan cooling. She took a mouthful. Butter, salt, warmth. She didn't realize she was crying until a tear hit the plate and spread like a tiny starburst. She swiped it away, embarrassed. "Hey," he said softly. "No apologies for tears." He looked like he wanted to reach across and touch her hand, but he waited, letting her be the one to close distance. When she didn't, he offered something else. Truth. "I should have come sooner." The sentence sat between them like a confession. He breathed in, steadying himself. "Your mother. When she died, I broke in places I pretended weren't broken. I thought I could outrun it, by working, by building, and then I made a worse mistake. I trusted the wrong person to keep this house kind while I figured myself out." Mariella's name didn't land in the room, but her shadow did. "I checked in," he said, guilt raking through each word. "I sent money. I was told you were fine, that you were distant, that you preferred school friends, that you were rarely home when I called. Pictures arrived. They looked posed. I wanted to believe them." He rubbed his eyes with his thumb and forefinger. "That wanting is my failure. I'm not asking you to fix it, only to let me fix what I can now." The elevator's hum was faint through the wall. The city, a living thing. Leah's fork trembled against the plate. She said you weren't coming back. I believed her less and less, he said. And then someone sent me what she didn't mean for me to see. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a phone, unlocked it, and slid it over. Not texted bravado or long paragraphs, just a single video clipped from a guest story. The party's backbone beat thudded through tinny speakers. The camera panned across laughter and lifted glasses and landed, briefly, almost accidentally, on a small figure at the kitchen doorway, half swallowed by shadow. Leah. You could see her counting the clicks of heels with her breath, the way night animals count danger. The clip cut, then another began, a photo of the aluminum pan, a caption layered on top with emojis, a careless, "can't believe there's still so much food," and the framed corner of a girl's shoulder just outside the rectangle of attention. Leah stared until the phone blurred. It was one thing to live a truth in the dark, another to see it exposed under someone else's light. He set the phone aside. "Tomorrow morning, we go to a doctor. Tonight you sleep. And we call my lawyer now." Lawyer. The word slid through her, not cold, not hot, just new. He nodded, already scrolling to a contact. Mariella will not surrender what she thinks is hers. She may lie. She may say, "I took you without consent." I won't let her turn your escape into a crime. He dialed. The conversation was brisk, low-voiced, threaded with terms Leah didn't know. Ex parte, emergency petition, welfare check on record. When he ended the call, he lifted his gaze back to her. "I'm filing for full custody tonight. We'll ask a judge for a temporary order. We'll keep everything traceable and clean." The doorbell rang. It wasn't a tentative sound. It had that official rhythm that made buildings straighten. Leah's pulse leapt. Her father's mouth flattened into a calm line. He rose. "It's okay," he said. "Whatever this is, we do it together." He opened the door to two officers and a woman in a slate gray jacket with a clipboard pressed to her ribs. "Evening," the taller officer said. Polite, not friendly. "We received a call alleging a domestic kidnapping and possible theft from a residence earlier tonight." The gray jacket woman lifted her ID. "Child Protective Services. We're here to ensure the minor is safe." "My daughter," her father said evenly. "You are welcome to come in." Leah stood so straight her back ached. The apartment's soft lights suddenly felt like an interrogation room. The CPS worker's gaze flicked across the kitchen, the food on the plate, the bag by the chair, and then settled on Leah's face with a frankness that wasn't unkind. "Sweetheart, can you tell me your name?" "Leah." "Leah." The woman nodded. "Do you feel safe here?" The question unmoored something. It made the night larger, the room quieter, the air easier to pull into lungs. Leah found her father's eyes, then the window's river glow, then the plate where a bite of scrambled egg waited like an invitation to keep living. "Yes," she said. "I do." The officer checked his notes. Mrs. Mariella Roth reports that the child was removed without her consent and that a piece of jewelry, a silver pin, has gone missing. Leah's stomach dipped. The leaf. She saw it again in the kitchen light, caught in napkin fibers, the greedy way it had gleamed on Mariella's ear. Her father watched her without pushing. The CPS worker did, too, letting silence be a bridge instead of a trap. Leah swallowed. "I found a pin under the fridge when I was cleaning. I gave it to her. She wore it." The officer's brows ticked. The CPS worker made a small note. Her father's voice was steady. "I can provide digital evidence that contradicts Ms. Roth's claim of a normal home environment." He pushed the phone across the counter, open to the saved clips. "You'll also find financial transfers, school reports about absences, and medical records that stop where they shouldn't." The officer watched the clips. His jaw tightened at the second video's carelessness, the pan of food, the glancing capture of a girl in shadows. "We'll need statements," he said. "And Ms. Roth will need to present any proof of ownership for the jewelry. For now, given the minor statement and the father's documentation, we are not removing the child." Leah's knees nearly gave out. She sat, not elegantly, just honestly, the chair catching her. The CPS worker turned to her with a gentler face than she'd held at the door. "I'm going to schedule a home visit and a medical evaluation. I'd also like to hear, in your own words, what a typical week has looked like for you." "Not now," she added quickly, seeing Leah's chest tighten. "Tomorrow, after sleep." The officers left with firm nods and the quiet that follows a tide going out. The apartment door clicked shut. For a moment, no one spoke. Her father exhaled. Not relief, resolve. He dialed again, another name, another voice joining their night-braided circle. "Simon," he said. "File the petition now. We've had a welfare visit. CPS is scheduling follow-up. Mariella has already alleged kidnapping and theft. I want a hearing at first light." He listened, then said, "Thank you," and ended the call. He turned to Leah. "There's a bedroom down the hall that faces the river," he said, softer now. "It has blackout curtains that don't quite work, which means the morning sneaks in whether you want it or not." He almost smiled. "I always like that." Leah stood on shaky legs. He handed her the bag, not because she needed to carry it, but because he understood some things are easier when you hold your own weight. She paused at the hallway, then looked back. "Will she stop?" she asked. The question was small and huge. "No," he said honestly. "People like Mariella don't stop because someone asks nicely. They stop when proof makes them, when a court orders them, when truth builds a wall she can't push through." He held her gaze. "We will build that wall, brick by brick, with facts, with patience, with every person who saw what you lived and is willing to say it out loud." Leah nodded. Not the old nod that meant surrender. A new one that meant "I hear you. I'm learning how to be brave." She walked the hallway. The river showed its shoulder through the window. The bed smelled like linen and something faintly citrus. She set the bag down, climbed under the blanket, and felt the unfamiliar weight of a mattress cradle her. In the living room, her father's voice murmured to the night. More calls, more plans, a net weaving itself around her life so it would not fall again. Sleep came like a slow tide. Before it took her, Leah pictured the silver leaf pin, the careless video, the closet door easing open under her hand. Proof wasn't just papers and signatures. Sometimes it was the way a bite of warm egg made your chest loosen. Sometimes it was a sentence spoken without stuttering. A roof is not love. Morning, she knew, would bring courts and questions and the possibility of being believed. She let that possibility sit on the pillow beside her like a light that didn't burn. And as the city breathed outside, she finally slept. The courthouse was not like the movies. No grand marble staircases, no echoing chambers of thunderous speeches. It smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant, of chairs polished by hundreds of nervous bodies shifting through long mornings. Still, to Leah, it felt enormous. The ceilings pressed down. The fluorescent lights hummed too brightly. Every footstep sounded like it might decide her future. Her father walked beside her, steady, a hand hovering near her shoulder, not forcing, not guiding, just there if she needed balance. His lawyer, a man with wire-rimmed glasses and a calm voice, carried folders stacked like bricks. Mariella sat across the aisle, her beauty sharpened into something severe. She wore the silver pin, polished and gleaming, as though proof could be turned into costume jewelry. The judge, a woman with hair pulled back in a severe knot, took her seat and glanced through the papers. Her eyes were practiced at scanning for lies. "We are here to review the emergency petition for custody of minor Liana Roth," she said, her tone even. "We will hear statements." Mariella spoke first. Her voice was sweetened, every syllable coated in sugar that cracked if you pressed too hard. "Your Honor, I have raised Leah since she was a baby. My late husband entrusted her to me. I've given her everything: food, shelter, education. This sudden intrusion, this attempt to rip her from her home, is cruel and unfounded." She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue that stayed suspiciously dry. The judge nodded but wrote nothing. Her gaze shifted. "Mr. Roth." Her father stood. His voice was low, steady. "I failed by being absent. I believed reports that she was cared for. I see now those were lies. My daughter has been sleeping in closets, eating leftovers, living unseen. That is not care. That is neglect." He paused, let silence do its work. "I am not asking for perfection. I am asking for the right to give her safety, love, and dignity." The lawyer played the clips. The judge watched without flinching. The video of the pan of food, the shadow of a child in the doorway, the photographs, the school records, the reports of absences that had been filed but never explained. Proof layered on proof, brick by brick. Then the judge turned to Leah. "Sweetheart," she said, not unkindly, "would you like to say anything? You don't have to. But if you want, this is your moment." The courtroom blurred. The walls leaned. Leah's palms went damp. Every instinct told her to stay silent, to nod, to shrink. But then she felt her father's presence at her side, not pushing, just waiting. She remembered the taste of warm eggs in a kitchen filled with light. She remembered the night air rushing in when the door had opened. And she remembered her own voice, trembling but true. "A roof is not love." She stood. Her knees shook, but her voice didn't break. "I was hungry most nights. I slept in a closet. I wasn't allowed to eat unless it was leftovers. And even then, I had to hide." Leah gestured to Mariella, "told me I should be grateful for a roof. But a roof is not love." The room went silent. Even Mariella's tissue stilled. The judge's pen scratched once across her notes. "Thank you," the judge said softly. She didn't ask for more. She didn't need to. The deliberation was short. The gavel struck like thunder in miniature. Full temporary custody to the biological father, effective immediately. Further hearings will determine permanency, but effective tonight. Leah is in her father's care. The sound was small but seismic. Leah's chest loosened. Her father closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with something like a vow burning there. Mariella sputtered, but her words were swept aside by the clerk's instructions and the shuffle of papers. For the first time, her power did not fill the room. They walked out into daylight. Real daylight, not stolen moments at windows or pale reflections on dishes. The city felt different, brighter, louder. People hurried past, cars honked, pigeons lifted in messy flight, and for once Leah wasn't looking for shadows in all that noise. She was looking forward. That night, in the apartment by the river, her father made pasta. Simple, nothing fancy, just noodles, garlic, olive oil. But he set a plate in front of her, without hesitation, without rules, without fear. "For you," he said. Not leftovers, not scraps. A meal made first, for her. She ate slowly, savoring. Halfway through, she laughed, a sound she barely recognized as her own. Her father looked startled, then smiled, and then he laughed too, and the sound filled the apartment like music. When she went to bed, she didn't curl on the floor. She lay on a mattress that held her weight like it was meant to. She pulled a blanket over herself and felt warmth settle into her bones. She thought about closets and confetti and sharp heels clicking down hallways, and she thought about car doors opening and voices calling her name. She closed her eyes and whispered, not to anyone, just to the air, "I am not leftovers." The city breathed outside. The river carried its silver path into tomorrow. Leah slept. If this story moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Cryspire. Your support keeps these stories alive, reminding the world that even the smallest voices deserve to be heard.